Hi, my name is Sage, and this week Valentine's Day is coming up, but so is Friday the 13th, which is today! At least it is when I'm posting. And so I'm gonna make a spooky Valentine's Day craft. And so I'm gonna take some tinfoil and clay, but first I'm gonna use the tinfoil and make a base, and it kind of looks like a pawn from chess, but then I'm gonna cover it with some clay. And truth be told, I didn't have a game plan on what I was gonna make, but I had a ball stylus and a vibe. So I let the creative process take over. I didn't know where I was headed with this craft, but I was just happy to be crafting. And I know that he's looking a little wonky right now, but that's just part of the art journey that I'm on. And part of this journey is adding more clay to his snout so it looks like he has a mouth of some sort, because I didn't know I was making an undead creature at this point. I had no thoughts except for this, that this little guy now needs some arms, and so I give him some armholes and break open the tinfoil and make 2 arm-like pieces before then covering them with clay. And so now that he has arms, I obviously have to give him some hands. To make his first one, I take some rounded clay and put it on the end of his arm before then giving him a thumb, so it now looks like he's wearing a mitten. But I don't stop there. I then take my pointy stylus and slice the mitten twice to make 3 fingers, so now he has a cartoon-like hand. And here I got the brilliant idea that this hand will hold some future flowers, and so I ball it up in a fist. So now I gotta make the second hand, and wha-bam! Now he got 2 hands. Next, I jump back to working on his face, and I'm realizing that I really like his eye sockets without any eyes because I think they look neat. And so I go ham and start making his face more skull-like. I give him some nostrils, along with some spooky skull texturing around his eyes, and give him some spooky skull-like teeth for his mouth. And since he's looking like he got the spookies, I obviously gotta give him a hat. And so I take some tinfoil and make a cone-like shape before covering it with some clay, and now it's a sorcerer's hat. And this hat goes on a journey. At first, I'm taking my ball stylus and running it up and down the hat to make it look all nice and textured and weathered. And I'm thinking this looks great. But then I change my mind and I cut off the top because it was too tall. I know you couldn't see it in frame, but that was part of the problem. It was just too tall. It couldn't even fit in the frame. It was taller than him. But now I get to do the fun part of making it look extra weathered. So I pull apart the ends to give it a natural ripped look. Once I'm happy with the hat, now I gotta work on giving him some feet, and I start by making little cones so I can make them bony later. But I also wanted to try and give him a foot that protrudes out from him, but then that was just ugly. So I go back to just the cones and blend them to his body on one side before then taking the pointy stylus and start engraving some indents across his toes to make it look like bones. And now that I have one set of bones done, obviously I have to do the next set, and bam! Now I have 2 sets of toes. And here I realize his head is looking like all one skull, but I wanted just the front part to be the skull and the rest to be fur, and so I make indents all around where the skull ends so you can tell it's 2 separate parts. Since the rest is fur, I take my ball stylus and run it up and down his body and his arms so I give him more of a fur-like texture. And now I get to work on a fun part. I get to make the flowers, and so here's some wire and I cut it 3 times thinking I'm gonna make 3 flowers, but I end up only making 2 in the end. And I put 2 in his hand, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, that's the vibe, not 3. And so I embark on my journey of making the flower part. And to do so, I take a really thin piece of clay, roll it up, and put that on the wire, as this will be the base of my flower. Next, I press small pieces of clay between my fingers to make the petals, and I wrap those around the base until I'm happy. I then do this again, and bam! I have 2 flowers. Next, I go back to his hands, and just like his toes, I take the pointy stylus and engrave some indents across his fingers to give them more of a bony-like appearance. I love doing this part because it made me happy thinking he just wants to give you some flowers and he's so excited to do so. He's waving to get your attention. I also think part of his lore is that he grows flowers. He may be undead, but he loves the living too. And so I put his hat back on and make some minor adjustments before then popping him into the oven, and wha-bam! He's now baked and ready to paint. I was also really proud of this transition. It was so smooth. I don't normally do it that smooth. I was so excited. Anyway, I'm now gonna paint his fur black. And this is the first coat. I end up missing some spots, so I go over them later, but this is the only full coat that I do. And same with his eye sockets, his nostrils, and his mouth. I do touch-ups later, but this is the only full base coat that I do. And after this, I move on to painting his toes, fingers, and skull face white. And I don't know what it is with my white, but it never has full coverage because I can always see the underneath tones of the clay. So unlike the black, I gotta do more than one coat. But since that's boring, bam! 3 coats later, and this is what it looks like. And you may be like, damn, I don't really see that much of a difference. But I swear in real life you can. But now I'm painting his hat and I'm hand mixing pink and red together, so it gives it the vibe of strawberry icing for Valentine's Day. I really like strawberry icing. I think it's just so yummy, dude. It's so good. And underneath his hat, I paint it red. And as you can see, when I was painting his fur, I got some black on it. And so this will take a few coats to cover as well. But since I already had the pink out, I'm gonna paint the roses because I'm gonna have to wait for the first layer of red paint to dry anyway. I then decide that his hands, toes, and skull face was not white enough, so I do another coat of white paint too. And so with the power of editing, the coats of paint are now done. And again, on camera, it doesn't look like I did anything for any of the white, but I did. And now I'm taking the white and highlighting the grooves of the hat before then getting brave and dry brushing it. I was scared that it would look muddy if I tried dry brushing it, but it didn't, and I was happy. I then took the red color and put it in between some of the grooves to really give it some more dimension. And since the hat was a success with the dry brushing, I tried doing the same thing with the fur but using gray, and I think the hat looked better because the grooves were a lot more intense compared to the fur that wasn't. And so I really had to go back into the grooves with the fur with some black to really balance everything out, but that's okay. I still think it looked decent in the end. And now I get to paint the flower stems a light green, and I really like this green against the pink. I just think it looks fun and cute. And speaking of pink, remember those indents I made on the hands and toes and skull? So I fill in the ones closest to the body with pink to really accentuate that these are bones protruding from the body because that's spooky. And then off camera, I gave some highlights to the roses. And that's the craft. I would like to say thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And now it's time for the glamour shots.